don't need to shout to be heard, but that's what most do. The insecure man broadcasts his worth like a street vendor screaming into an indifferent crowd, desperate for attention, terrified of silence. And here lies the first mistake: over-explaining yourself. You'll see it everywhere: men who cannot make a decision without narrating it, justifying it, wrapping it in disclaimers like fragile glass. They speak not to inform, but to be approved. I just thought it would be better if. I didn't mean to upset you, but. This compulsive justification is not humility. It is a trembling need for reassurance, and it bleeds power, because power is not verbose. Power is quiet. It acts and lets others interpret. It leaves room for mystery, and in that void, authority grows. But when you fill every silence with nervous reasoning, you're telling the world you don't believe your own voice carries weight. You are asking to be allowed, and anyone who asks to be allowed has already forfeited their place at the table. Ask yourself, who are you trying to convince, me or yourself? The second mistake is laughing too much. And not just laughter, but the wrong kind of laughter, the reflexive, apologetic kind. The chuckle after a sentence that didn't land. The soft laugh when someone interrupts you. The grin that surfaces not from joy, but from fear. Watch closely in a room full of men, and you'll see it. Someone makes a statement, and the insecure man laughs. Not because something was funny. It is the body's way of saying, "Don't attack me, I'm harmless." That's not charm, that's submission. That's a dog rolling onto its back before the threat has even arrived. Understand this: your laughter teaches people how to treat you. If you laugh every time you speak, they learn that your words are decorations, not declarations. That your presence is filler, not force. There's nothing wrong with humor, but it must come from control, not from compulsion. The moment your smile becomes a shield, you've already lost the battle of presence. Some of the most powerful men barely smile at all, not because they are cruel, but because they know the cost of giving away emotion too easily. Emotion is a currency, and insecure men spend it recklessly, hoping someone will tip them in validation. So here we are. 2 signs already. Over-explaining and nervous laughter are enough to mark you in the eyes of wolves. And make no mistake, the world is filled with them. You may think you're simply being polite, being clear, being friendly. But beneath the surface, a darker transaction is occurring. You are revealing your need, and need is a scent, a strong one. In a jungle, it's blood. In a palace, it's weakness. In conversation, it's insecurity. And predators, whether in a boardroom or a bedroom, respond the same way. They smell it, they smile, and then they move in. Do not confuse silence with awkwardness. Do not confuse stillness with discomfort. The strongest presence in any room is rarely the loudest. It is the man who doesn't flinch at silence. The one who does not decorate his speech with apologies. The one who speaks as if he is right and is willing to be wrong without falling apart. The one who does not laugh unless he is genuinely amused, not because the moment demands softness. That man commands a different level of respect, and he earns it not by asking, but by embodying. This is where we begin. Not with what to say, but with what not to reveal. Not with how to impress, but how to stop leaking need. These small reflexes, the extra words, the shaky smiles, are betrayals. They expose you long before your ideas can protect you, and you will not see the damage in the moment. You will only feel it later, when your words are forgotten, but the impression remains. Something off, something weak, something untrustworthy. If you must explain, do it once. If they don't understand, let them ask. If they misinterpret you, let it be. If you're misunderstood, endure it in silence. It is better to be feared for your distance than pitied for your noise. And if you must smile, smile with weight. Let your laughter carry the edge of discipline, not desperation. Because the more you try to appear harmless, the more people will test you. And when they do, you must either become the man they thought you weren't, or be devoured by the role you chose to play. Now let's sharpen the blade further. The third mistake that stains your presence with insecurity is seeking constant validation. And I don't mean the obvious kind, likes, compliments, applause. I mean the subtle, insidious craving for agreement. You say something and then look around to gauge reactions. You pause mid-sentence, waiting for a nod, a murmur, some form of approval. You live not to speak your truth, but to be confirmed. And this makes you a mirror, not a man. A man speaks with conviction. He knows his words will disturb someone. He expects it. He welcomes it. Because he is not looking to belong, he is looking to be understood by those who can handle him. But the insecure man is addicted to reassurance. Every decision becomes a committee. Every opinion must be softened to avoid disapproval. And this need for consensus slowly dissolves any edge he once had. You do not need to be agreed with. You need to be respected. And those two often walk separate roads. The fourth mistake is equally corrosive, but even more invisible: oversharing your emotions without strategy. There is a myth that says vulnerability is always strength. It is not. Vulnerability is strength only when it's a choice, not when it's a leak. Most men pour their insecurities out in the name of honesty. They confess too early, too often, and too fully, hoping that being raw will earn them intimacy. But in truth, they are handing their sword to someone else, praying it won't be used. This is not courage, it's a preemptive surrender. You don't need to hide what you feel, but you must learn when and how to express it. Timing is everything. Context is everything. A lion does not whimper before the fight. He does not explain his fear to the herd. He channels it. He controls it. And if he bleeds in private. Not because he's ashamed, but because he understands the psychology of optics. You do not owe the world your insides, especially not before they've earned the right to see them. Let's be clear. True strength is not numbness. It is control. The man who can feel everything but still command himself, that is a man others fear and follow. But the one who collapses into his feelings and makes them everyone's burden, he is pitied, not respected. And there's a quiet contempt that comes with being pitied. You won't always hear it, but you will feel it in the way people pull away, in the way their eyes scan past you, in the way your name fades from their conversations. They will not tell you you've lost value. They will simply act as if you never had it. So now you begin to see the architecture of insecurity. It is not built on big mistakes. It is made of tiny habits. The pause before speaking, the laugh that doesn't match the tone, the need for nods, the overexposed heart. All of them signs, all of them tells. And the world reads them like a gambler reads a nervous hand. They won't always call you out. Sometimes they'll even smile and play along. But inside, a ledger is being kept, and you're being marked not for what you said, but for what you revealed. This is why silence is often your greatest shield, not as avoidance, but as a filter. The less you say, the more others reveal. The less you need, the more they give. The less you explain, the more your presence becomes a question, and questions, unlike answers, hold power. Your task is not to be liked. It is to be known as someone who cannot be easily read, easily shaken, or easily used. And the only way to be that man is to kill these reflexes before they betray you. There is a discipline in restraint, a dignity in brevity, and a frightening strength in the man who does not flinch when misunderstood. He does not crave the room. He bends it, quietly, slowly, without apology. He is not here to be approved. He is here to command. And he commands not with volume, not with tears, but with presence. It is not that he feels less. It is that he leaks less. He saves his emotions for strategy. And strategy, not sentiment, is what separates the king from the casualty. The fifth mistake, perhaps the most tragic, is breaking eye contact too soon. It seems minor, a glance away, a downward flick, a nervous blink when tension rises. But make no mistake, the eyes are declarations, and insecure men look away because they are afraid their gaze will be challenged, or worse, exposed. They believe the eyes are a window into weakness, and so they close the blinds too early, hoping no one notices the trembling inside. But what they fail to see is that the moment they avert their gaze, they transfer power. To hold eye contact is to say, I see you, and I am unafraid of being seen. It is not aggression, it is ownership. Ownership of your space, ownership of your intent. When you cannot hold someone's gaze, especially in discomfort, you signal fragility. You tell them, without a word, that they are more certain, more grounded, more dominant. And people remember how you looked at them, or didn't. Long after your words have faded, your eyes remain stamped on their memory. Did you flinch, or did you hold? That moment defines more than most men realize. The sixth mistake is apologizing for things you're not sorry for. And I don't mean the grand gestures of remorse. I mean the compulsive knee-jerk apologies woven into everyday speech. Sorry, just one quick question. Sorry if I'm being annoying. Sorry to bother you. These are not gestures of kindness. They are symptoms of conditioning. Insecure men use apologies as padding, softening their existence, making themselves smaller before they even take up space. But understand this, the more you pre-apologize for your presence, the more you train others to see you as an inconvenience. You are telling the world, I expect to be rejected, so let me shrink first and save you the trouble. But power does not shrink. It does not ask permission to exist. It stands, it speaks, it moves, and it does so without the constant need to be forgiven for its own shadow. If you truly did something wrong, own it. If not, stop bleeding apologies for the crime of existing. Every unwarranted sorry costs you authority, and once authority is eroded, influence dies quietly in its sleep. Together, these two habits, dodging the gaze and defaulting to apology, erode your foundation. They seem harmless, polite even, but at their core, they are confessions. You are confessing to a lack of belief in your own right to be here. You are confessing to an unspoken guilt about your own strength. You are, in subtle and constant ways, asking the world to overlook you rather than confront you, and the world obliges. It steps over you, around you, past you, until you become a ghost in the very rooms you hope to conquer. There's a different kind of silence that power commands. It's not the silence of fear, it's the silence of certainty. A man who holds his gaze doesn't need to explain it. A man who does not apologize for things he believes in doesn't need to defend his tone. His presence is not loud, but it is unignorable, because it is rooted, and what is rooted cannot be swayed by the opinions of wind. You see, the insecure man wants comfort. He wants to be liked, approved, coddled. But the powerful man wants clarity. He wants truth, even if it's uncomfortable. He wants respect, even if it costs him popularity. He would rather be alone in integrity than embraced in self-betrayal. So when you flinch in your gaze, when you bow in apology, ask yourself, what are you trading for that fleeting sense of safety? And is it worth the erosion of your voice? Most men will never know how much strength lives in a still gaze, how much dignity is preserved in a withheld sorry, because they never test themselves. They give in too soon, they fold before they're asked to, and then they wonder why the world doesn't reflect back the confidence they crave. But the world does reflect. It reflects exactly what you show it. And if all you show is hesitation, then all you will ever receive is permission to remain small. So now you see. In the quiet things, in the flicker of an eye, in the tremble of a voice, in the unnecessary sorry, a man reveals what he truly believes about himself. And belief, more than appearance, is what shapes your fate. Look again, speak again, this time without shrinking. Because every inch you give away in your presence becomes a mile others will walk over you without hesitation. The seventh mistake that broadcasts insecurity is trying too hard to be liked. You feel it in their tone, the agreeable, over-accommodating rhythm. You see it in their gestures, the eager nods, the excessive compliments, the frantic need to fill silence with kindness. But here's the bitter truth. The more you chase likability, the less respect you command. People may smile at you, they may even say you're sweet, but deep down, they don't trust a man who needs their approval like air. Why? Because neediness is dishonest. The desire to be liked twists your behavior into something inauthentic. You say what pleases, you hide what confronts, you tailor your truth to fit the room, and eventually, there's nothing of you left, just a reflection of whatever you think they want. But people are not drawn to mirrors. They're drawn to men who can hold their shape in any environment. The man who can be disliked without folding. The man who can be disagreed with and not flinch. Because he is not performing, he is not campaigning, he is simply solid. The eighth mistake is overcompensating through status signals. Bragging, name-dropping, flaunting things that are meant to scream, I matter. You've seen it. The man who weaves his achievements into every sentence, who turns every conversation into an arena to validate his worth. It's not power, it's panic. It's the fear that if he doesn't shout his value, no one will see it. But the truth is, the louder a man declares his worth, the more invisible it becomes. Because power doesn't declare, it demonstrates. True status is felt, not flaunted. It's in the stillness of a man who doesn't need to impress you. It's in the confidence of someone who has everything to prove but nothing to explain. And here's what most insecure men don't understand. The moment you try to prove you're above others, you admit you're beneath something, your own doubt. Your need for validation becomes the proof that you lack it, and so your performance becomes a confession. Let's be honest, insecurity isn't always loud, but it's always visible to those who know what to look for. You can hide it in wealth, you can bury it in charm. But the man who seeks approval through likability and status reveals one thing: he hasn't accepted himself yet. And because he hasn't, he's always performing. But performance cannot build connection, it cannot build trust, it builds distance, because others can sense it. This man is not whole, he is curated, and curated people are exhausting to be around. What's more, the obsession with being liked is dangerous. It makes you pliable, you shift to avoid conflict, you betray your standards for smiles, you stay quiet when you should speak, just to avoid rejection. But silence is not always neutral. Sometimes silence is cowardice. Sometimes silence is surrender. And the man who surrenders too often becomes the one no one remembers because he stood for nothing. His need to be liked erased everything that made him distinct. So how do you break this? You must be willing to disappoint. You must accept that not everyone will clap for your truth, that some will call you arrogant when you're simply honest, that others will distance themselves when you stop flattering them. And when that happens, good, let it. It is only when the wrong people walk away that the right ones find the space to enter. But you must be firm enough to endure the silence in between. This is the irony. The man who stops trying to be liked becomes magnetic, not because he is cold, but because he is grounded. He's not trying to sell you something. He's not tailoring his soul to fit your taste. He's offering what is real, and real is rare. Real is costly. Real is dangerous, but real is unforgettable. And unforgettable men are never insecure, they are deliberate, and their very presence leaves a residue that no flattery ever could. And that's what makes the next mistake so devastating. The ninth mistake is explaining jokes or opinions after they fall flat. You've seen it. Someone speaks with confidence, drops a line meant to land, and when silence follows, panic sets in. They rush to clarify. I was just kidding. That came out wrong. I didn't mean it like that. And in doing so, they unravel themselves. Because the moment you feel the need to explain your intent after silence, you expose that your confidence was conditional. Real confidence does not retreat when misunderstood. It holds. It lets the silence sit. It doesn't grovel for understanding. But the insecure man is terrified of being misread. He wants to be clear, yes, but more than that, he wants to be liked. And that want poisons him. Because what you say is never as damaging as what you walk back. You're telling the room that your words are negotiable, that your voice folds under discomfort. But discomfort is the price of truth. If you cannot sit in it, you will always edit yourself to avoid it, and people will learn that your words have no backbone. The 10th mistake is seeking reassurance after making a decision. You finally act, and then immediately, you look for confirmation. Was that okay? Do you think I handled that right? Maybe I should have said it differently? And just like that, you drain your power from the decision you just made. Because every time you ask for reassurance, you imply uncertainty. And certainty is the oxygen of leadership. If you cannot breathe your own choices without asking others for air, you will never hold authority. People don't follow perfection, they follow conviction. And conviction is not the absence of doubt, it's the refusal to let doubt make your choices. So when you move, move cleanly. Let others interpret, let them question, let them disagree. But don't let their response determine your posture. Because when you move with second guessing, you might as well not move at all. You are broadcasting fragility disguised as humility. And there is nothing humble about a man who needs to be patted on the back after every step. Together, these two habits, the walking back and the post-action insecurity, undermine everything you try to build. They turn your words into whispers and your movements into ripples that never form waves. And here's the cruel truth. The people you seek reassurance from will begin to trust you less. Not because you aren't capable, but because you've trained them to see you as unsure. Your own anxiety becomes a narrative they believe. And once that belief forms, it becomes hard to reverse. You are no longer seen as a source of certainty, but as someone who always needs emotional spotters before lifting even the smallest weight. Let that sink in. Your reputation is not built in grand gestures. It is built in these tiny recurring leaks of uncertainty. A laugh here, a backpedal there, a quick "was that okay?" after every move. It's like water dripping through stone. It may seem small, but over time it hollows out the impression others have of you. And when a man's presence is hollow, no amount of charm or intellect can fill it back up. Authority dies not in public failures, but in private patterns. And the men who lose the most are often the ones who simply couldn't stop apologizing for who they are. So the challenge is this: when you speak, stand by it. Even if it lands flat, even if someone frowns, even if silence follows. Don't flinch. Let people sit with your truth. If it was wrong, you'll know it, not because they didn't clap, but because you felt it later. That's how power refines itself, not by crowd approval, but by internal correction. And when you act with finality. Ask for feedback when it serves growth, not when it serves fear. There is a difference. One builds, the other begs. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be rooted. And rooted men do not explain the joke. Do not chase approval. Do not soften every move with a nervous smile. They trust that their truth has weight, and if it lands wrong, they learn and move on. But they never apologize for existing in full, because the moment you do, you teach the world to expect your collapse. And once they expect it, they stop listening when you speak. That brings us to the 11th mistake, the need to defend your reputation in every room. Insecure men are obsessed with perception. They monitor how they're seen, like a prisoner watches the guard's footsteps, nervous, hyper-aware, enslaved. The moment someone says something critical, even if it's subtle, they respond. That's not true. You don't know the full story. Let me explain what really happened. What they don't realize is that every defense is a subtle admission. I care what you think of me more than I care about what I know to be true. And that's blood in the water, because once you show that your identity depends on public narrative, anyone can control you by shaping it. All it takes is a rumor, a look, a question laced with sarcasm. Suddenly your energy is being spent defending, clarifying, reacting. You're no longer leading, you're responding. And response is not power, it's submission in slow motion. Reputation is not protected by noise, it's protected by consistency. Let your actions do the talking, and when someone speaks against you, smile, let them. A man who is whole does not scramble to stitch together every misunderstanding. He lets the silence burn, and in that fire, his name becomes sharper, not weaker. The 12th and final mistake is masking insecurity with aggression. The puffed chest, the raised voice, the cutting sarcasm meant to wound before being wounded. These are not signs of strength. They are flinches disguised as fists. A truly powerful man never needs to intimidate. He never needs to bark. His silence does the work. His presence makes the room shift. But the insecure man mistakes fear for respect. He believes volume equals command. He confuses compliance with loyalty. So he controls through tension, not influence. And in doing so, he builds fragile empires. Relationships that last only as long as people are afraid of him. But fear is short-lived. Sooner or later, people either leave or retaliate. And what does he have then? Nothing but a reputation built on volatility, not virtue. True power is calm. It does not threaten, it promises. It does not react, it chooses. And it never reveals its insecurities through outbursts. It absorbs, it waits, it calculates. If you've been listening closely, you already know insecurity doesn't always look weak. Sometimes it looks loud. Sometimes it wears the costume of charm, of warmth, of confidence. But beneath the performance, the pattern reveals itself. Neediness, over-explanation, fragile ego, reassurance addiction, approval worship. These are not random, they are symptoms of a deeper truth. A man who has not yet built himself. A man who is still reacting to every room he enters. A man who has not anchored his identity deep enough to remain still when waves crash. But now you know what to kill. Not parts of your personality, but habits that sabotage it. You don't need to become cold. You need to become clear. You don't need to become cruel. You need to become quiet. You don't need to manipulate others. You need to master yourself. And that mastery begins in the spaces between your reflexes, between the joke and the need to explain it, the gaze and the urge to look away, the silence and the itch to fill it. Power is not granted, it is not performed, it is remembered. Because the man who speaks once with full weight leaves more impact than the one who pleads for attention in every breath. Be the one they remember, Not because you were loud, but because you were undeniable. Not because you begged to be liked, but because you could be disliked without disappearing. That is the final victory over insecurity, to exist fully, calmly, and without apology. So now the mirror is yours. Look close. Strip away the masks, and in the quiet that follows, ask yourself, which man have I been? The one who seeks to be seen, or the one who sees without fear? The answer is already in you. The next move determines everything else. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you has already shifted. A part of you is done performing, done leaking power, done begging to be seen through someone else's eyes. A part of you has already chosen the path of silence, of strength, of sovereignty. And maybe it scares you, because choosing yourself always does. It means giving up the comfort of being understood by everyone. It means walking away from people who only loved the version of you that played small. But here's the truth. Being accepted is worthless if the cost is abandoning who you really are. Real power begins the moment you stop editing your soul to fit their expectations. So I'll ask you right now, in this moment, are you willing to be misread, to be judged, to be called cold, arrogant, difficult, simply because you chose to stop apologizing for your strength? Are you willing to lose what was built on fear, just to stand on something real? If this message spoke to the part of you that's done hiding, if it hit something deeper than words, then write in the comments, I choose my power. Let's see who's truly ready to burn the costume and step forward without the mask. And don't stop here. The next video will take you even further into the kind of clarity most people avoid their entire lives. Watch it. It matters more than you know. I'll meet you there.